recent HHS government health survey found that nearly half of young adults 18 to 25 had experienced either substance use or mental health disorder during the height of the pandemic. The report also found that many of those people did not receive treatment.
I had a therapist tell me once, it was ironic how much love I gave out, because I didn't give much to myself.
The bondage that we experience in our soul is not just from the event, but from the lies that the enemy whispered to you that it was your fault as a result of the event.
It is reminding myself that if someone can love a dying thing this way, can hold the Lazarus of my body and give thanks for the way it holds back. If someone can kiss the scars, administer the pills, absorb the bad days, and wake up smiling next to me, then I can try to breathe again. Because self-love does not always come first, or second, or even ever. But your love be the guardrail on the ledge, be the drawers that hide all the sharp things, be the body that carries my collapsed frame into bed, be the flowers you bought. Because even though they are dying too, they still dance. Love will not heal me, will not wipe my slate of a body clean. I will always be a woman of wounds, of rope-marked neck and melted skin. Love will not heal me, but it will hold my hand if I ever heal myself.
Good evening, everyone. I want to take this time to thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. This is going to be a very powerful and effective show. You have time to go and tell your friends and your family. I really want everybody to tune in. I want you to comment. I want you to like. And it's not so much about that for me tonight, but it's about really, really leaning in and allowing yourself to hear, to take part in, and really pay attention to tonight's show. We're going to be talking about a subject that is so dear to my heart in so many different facets, which we'll get into as we get into the show. But I want to welcome my guests to the show. But before I do that, you ever think about what we make these New Year's resolutions, right? And the first thing we say is, I am going to work on fitness. I am going to lose weight. This is an opportunity to start again. But what we don't talk about is how we prepare ourselves and how we make ourselves mentally fit. So help me welcome my guest on tonight's show. Help me welcome Pastor Robert Farah, who is currently a case manager for Children's Home in Poughkeepsie. Pastor Farah, please join me tonight on Real Talk.
God bless you, Pastor. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you once again for being on Real Talk. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
I just want to dive really right into the show. But before we do that, of course, we have our guests that are chiming in tonight. Why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us a little bit about your background before we get into the story.
Well, I started in counseling about 15 years ago. I had a tragedy in my own family where I lost a 2-year-old, and it kind of thrusted me into the counseling ministry, counseling profession. And ever since then, I've been working in social services, helping others that are in need. And now I've been doing a lot of human services work. I have a private practice as a Christian counselor and life coach. So I was able to complete my education at Liberty University, a bachelor's in psychology and Christian counseling, and a master's in Christian ministry and pastoral counseling.
That's beautiful. All right, we're going to dive right in again. It's so great to have some of our guests on tonight. We have Tatiana Farah. I guess there's a relation there, of course. Christina Brown. Sister Catherine Summers is always such a guest on our show. We have Cece Vega, Vanessa Faye. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Let's get right into this. Pastor, it's so interesting. I opened up the show. We're talking about, we always prepare ourselves, right? When we talk about physical fitness, we talk about how we're going to lose weight. We go to the gym. I mean, we do all those things, but sometimes it becomes almost like a stigma, especially in our Black communities and our Black cultures, to talk about being mentally fit. So I want to talk about that because I think it's extremely important, right? I think we're not out of COVID, but we're past that big height of COVID, right? That we had those years ago, but it's still real. It's so real. So Pastor, can you share with us, what is your take when clients come in and not, I don't want to, break anybody's HIPAA rules, but what's your take on the clients that come in and about being mentally fit?
Well, it's really a powerful statement you made, because a lot of people have survived some very difficult things, especially throughout the pandemic. But because they survived doesn't mean that it's over, because the trauma is still there. So it's like they made it out alive, but they're still dealing with the trauma, the residue. And dealing with that trauma is very, very debilitating over time. And if you don't have strategy on how to overcome how it affected you mentally, emotionally, how it even affected you spiritually, then it could definitely it could be overbearing and push you into a place of burnout, or just overly stressed. And people may never understand it. Sometimes people can't communicate how they're feeling emotionally or mentally, but they know that they're having some issues. So, people survived a lot of major things, but some of the trauma is still there.
Right. So we started the show, Pastor, and you mentioned that you lost a child, which is so traumatic.
Mhm.
How did you get through that? How did you and your wife navigate? And the reason why I use the word navigate, because
Mhm.
there's no compass in getting
Right,
through that grief. Like, let's just
right,
be
right,
no
right,
plan, there's no playbook, there's
right,
nothing. Of course, thank
right.
God we have God who navigates and helps us. But how do you guys get through that? That's trauma.
It Well, that's something you never really get over. But I know that when it first happened, I didn't do the proper things that I would need for my own mental and emotional health. Definitely not. So I had to learn later that it was okay to get therapy. It's okay to get counseling. It's okay to really strategize on how to balance my mental health, making sure that I'm where I need to be mentally. And that came later. So I definitely would have, if I would have done it differently before, I would have definitely got all the help needed. Support groups are very helpful. Stress management activities are very helpful. One-on-one therapy is very helpful. And I think if I would have done that, I probably would have got through it a little. I would have got through it a little more than I did, because I didn't do any of those things. But my journey was a little different. By me getting into school and really pursuing this career, it helped me a lot. It was very therapeutic for me.
Yeah. I lost an older brother. This was back in 1994. And as you were talking, Pastor, my mind went to the movie with Will Smith, Collateral Damage. I think it was Collateral
Oh,
Damage. I think it was that one,
mhm,
when they lost a child. And
uh-huh,
I think it was that one. And it took him and his wife down such a dark path.
uh-huh,
And when I lost my brother, I watched my mom really go through mentally. And to your
uh-huh.
point, I don't think you ever really get over it. I think you can
Right,
try. I think I want you to get through some of it, but you don't really
right.
get over it. What are some of the signs that people, they're just not over it? Like, I watched it. I mean, she
Mhm.
just went kind of downhill.
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
some signs that we can look out for?
Well, you notice a major transformation with the person, personality change. Some
Yes.
patterns that they used to have changed dramatically. You start noticing their perspective has changed, their outlook on life has changed. They're just not the same person. And you can notice also they have issues with functioning like they used to be able to function. Even in the
Yes.
workplace or wherever they're doing things, they're not able to function like they used to. So you start noticing these things, and you know
Yeah.
that the person has been affected in a major way. And for children, it's very important, because children, they may be dealing with stress and they don't know how to communicate. So you got to
Mm,
really pay attention to them being more isolated than normal, that their
yes.
eating habits changing, their sleeping habits changing, so you can address those stress issues that they're dealing with. And there is strategy out there, but sometimes people don't kind of seek out strategy and action steps.
Yeah. And to your experience, Pastor, do you find that there can be brain damage from trauma?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. I think there's definitely can be brain damage and some residue from the trauma that you really got to
Yeah.
work through. And it's something you have to be intentional about.
Right.
We're people who pray, but God gives us strategy along with prayer so that we can get through things that life brings us. And that's only going to happen through, intentional, strategic movement. You really have to have a mindset on how do I, you know, do the things necessary to get me through this. Because one thing I tell people, I've been doing a lot of stuff on stress management, and that's something
Okay.
none of us can avoid stress. We all gonna have to deal with some sort of stress, but learning how to manage it is going to be key. And that's what we need to really kind of learn how to do, because stress will definitely have a major effect.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. You can talk about stress
Mhm.
management. In other words, reversing it is the management of stress. So what are
Right.
some of the twos. Tatiana chimed in and she said, faith without works is dead. She's right, because it
Yeah.
does take faith to really get through some things, because faith is,
Right.
faith you can't see how to get through with your natural eye. So it really
Right.
does take.
Right.
So can you kind of talk to us a little about how to manage the stress? What are some of the key points we can do? Because you're right, we all have stress. How do we
Right.
manage it?
Right. That's important because stress is such a huge thing and we can't ignore it. We have to address it in some way. So for everybody that may look different, but one thing you have to do is gain a perspective about what you're going through. I always teach people that you may have to break up things in kind of basically it's a manageable parts. Because
Okay.
sometimes when you're dealing with a whole lot of stress from different areas all at the same time, it can get overwhelming. So you have to find ways to break it up into manageable parts so that you can kind of deal with it. You're not going to always be able to deal with it one at a time, but you can definitely deal with less than you have been dealing with if you're strategic about it.
Yeah. When I think about my own life, Pastor, I'm not really sure if I mentioned the last time you were on the show. I've had my own traumas in my life, being a victim of surviving sexual abuse and things like that. And one of the key components that, it was many components. One of the key components that definitely kept me locked into not disclosing was fear.
Mhm.
So
Right.
can we talk about how fear plays such a role in the lives of some people, and that's why they
Mhm.
might not seek help. That's why they might
Right.
not feel that help is for them. Because I think that was kind of what I went through, part of some of it. Why I didn't seek help, why you
Mhm.
go down certain paths, why you make certain decisions.
Mhm.
Fear is definitely a
Mhm.
thief of faith. We know that.
Right.
But why
Uh-huh.
is fear such a weighty component?
It's just when you're expressing how you really do feel authentically, it puts you in a very vulnerable place, a very vulnerable place. And you have to feel safe about who you're expressing it to. So that's why I always encourage therapy, that someone that's biased, that you can really just express how you're feeling, really get it out, because it's hard to know who to trust with certain things that you're going through in your life and expressing deep, dark feelings that maybe other people may not understand. Sometimes you need a trained professional to help you navigate and get the action steps you need. Someone that's biased. A lot of the clients that I have, they intentionally look for people, for me, or someone who does not know them, who doesn't have any connection to their family members or friends, so they can really feel open about expressing how they really feel and take on the action steps that they need. And sometimes they find out themselves what they need, but they just need to talk about it for sure.
Because I'm in, my 50s, late 50s now, but back then I don't know if suicide was high ranking, but even
Mhm.
kids, Pastor, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's your experience, kids are committing suicide. And as we're talking tonight about trauma, we're talking about stressful things. Kids go through bullying and things like that.
Yes.
Why is suicide so high in a world like
Mhm.
today? I mean, it's just kids are
Yeah.
committing suicide, but just I don't. It's just high. Why is that?
Yeah, it has skyrocketed amongst our
Yes.
young people with kids. I actually work as a case manager for the children's home, so we deal with young people who are kind of in a major dilemma as far as stress and anxiety. And we kind of oversee a residential treatment center for those that can't really deal with the issues that they have with their families. So I see suicidal situations all the time amongst our young people. And I think a lot of it has to do with things that they've been through, but also being inundated with so much information. It's just
Mm,
like they're growing up so fast now. It's
yeah.
everything is at the touch of a button. Some things sometimes you have to be a certain age to deal with, and they have access to so much at such an early age. And when you couple that with trauma, it's just too much to handle. So they're not mature enough to deal with this. So suicide rates has skyrocketed amongst our young people, and it's really going to take treatment plans to really
Mm,
deal with the issues that they're dealing with and teaching them how to overcome it. Because if you don't do that, they will definitely get overwhelmed with the stress. They see so much now, so much that they
right,
see.
right. Mental illness, I don't want to call it illness, but being mentally fit is such
Uh-huh.
a real thing that we're dealing with. And we all know,
Yeah,
based on our spiritual lives, that we know God can heal us, God can
right.
pull us through it. But how do you help balance young people? We're in churches, and
Yeah,
young people come to church, and they're facing, to your point, real things. So let's take it to the church side. How do we even
right.
help in church? Do we bring in people like yourself to come in and talk to our young people? What can we do in church to even help young people?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is a time like never before where we need to start to establish programs, support groups, bring in trained professionals, all the things that are necessary to get them that access to help. Sometimes it's not even available in the church circle. When I came through the pandemic, I did a lot of work with like grief recovery groups where people had dealt with loss, and some churches were able to establish grief recovery groups so that they'll be able to kind of get through the trauma of the losses that they've dealt with. So I think we have to make those things available. We need to partner with other programs that are leaning in the direction of mental health and balancing your mental health. And we got to make these things available. We got to make it a part of our ministries. That is an extension of our ministries, because those are the needs that are amongst our people. And I believe God wants us to be whole, of mind, body, and soul. He wants every part of us to be whole. So there's some areas that you got to be really intentional and target those areas so that people can get the healing that they need. And God will approach things different ways. I mean, God is coming in unconventional ways now. God is not only moving one way. God will come in a way that we've never seen before, but it's bringing healing and deliverance in a way that we may not be used to. But whatever God is doing, I don't want him to do it without me.
Right. And, as you were talking, Pastor, what came to my mind is resource.
Right.
The church being that resource. We know God is the source,
Right.
but church being a resource, to your point, not just young people. You have even seniors. Seniors today find themselves, they're just alone. I think it's just everybody. So many people are going through so many different things mentally, and which is why this topic is so powerful, of trying to get mentally fit. One of the other things I think about was suffering in silence. I think a lot of people suffer in silence. Can we talk about that a little bit? Me coming up, as we just touched a little bit of being sexually abused. I work with women and girls with the Safe Center in Bethpage, and some of them, one of the key components, because you're trained negatively from the perpetrator to be silent, so then you suffer in that silence. So can we kind of talk about suffering in silence a little bit? What is your thoughts on that?
That's so important that we attack that, because people are really, they're just bleeding, and they're just going through major issues that they don't talk about. And it's very unfortunate. We have to really be discerning enough, but more importantly, like we said earlier, we have to have those resources available so they can know that this is available for you if you're feeling a certain way, and you can always take advantage of these opportunities to get to your place of healing, and let it be a culture where it's okay. It's okay to seek help for your mental health. It's okay to seek help for your emotional health. It's okay to seek help in those areas, because truth be told, your mental and emotional health affects your physical health.
Yes,
many diseases are stress related. So if we're not really balancing and getting mentally fit, it's going to affect our physical fitness. So when we understand that it's all intertwined, then we'll know it's just as important as everything else. And we're going to strategically address those issues. We're going to make those resources available, and we're going to make it okay. Like I've really been working hard to build a culture where it's okay, to communicate. It's a culture where it's okay to say that I'm not okay. It's okay to seek help for things that you're going through. And when you start creating that kind of culture, it becomes the norm, and it doesn't feel so uncomfortable, you know what I mean, like it did for years before.
Yeah, I'm glad you went back, because I was going to circle back to that culture, because I think that's extremely important, especially to everyone that's listening today. Because why do we stigmatize, again, in the Black culture, that is number one, not okay to be, it's not okay not to be okay, because sometimes we're not okay. And then we stigmatize going to counseling. We stigmatize having something mentally that you need to address. We have so many stigmas already that are put on us. Let's be honest here. And then now there's another one. And to your point, it does affect us physically. In the documentary that I did, Amazing Grace Surviving Sexual Abuse, with myself, and I interviewed 5 women. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because one of the ladies that I interviewed is not Black, right? And her outcome was totally different. And I noticed this than the rest of us, than the 5 of us. It was just amazing. She said, and her story was horrific. But you know what she said? She said she got herself a good therapist. She came to New York, got a good therapist, and got herself together. The
Right.
5 of us on the other side, we allow what we went through. It took us down.
Right.
And
Right.
dialogue about that, because I'm just wondering why, for us in our culture and how we're processed, why did we go down? Why did it cause some of us to want to commit suicide? Why did it cause us shut down? Why did it cause marriages to break up? Why? See, I brought that up as a difference. Why the difference?
Because I know specifically the African American community is expected to be strong, and the definition of strong may mean that you're a disservice to yourself. So, you can be strong and still seek help. You could be strong and still be intentional about your mental health and your emotional health. Being strong doesn't mean that you don't need help. It just means that you are able to process through with the help. So I think when we define strong, we think, well, I don't need anybody. It's an indictment against your faith. You don't believe God because you're seeking out help. And those are all, erroneous teachings. The truth is, people that are strong know that there are times where you do need help. And you're strong enough to know that I'll even step out and be vulnerable and seek the help that I need so that I can be okay. Because if I'm not okay, everything connected to me is affected. It's not just me. You know what I mean?
That's so true. We're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to come back and continue to talk with Pastor Farah about being mentally fit. Please don't go anywhere. We want you to we also want you to write something in the chat. Put your questions in the chat. Pastor Farah is here to answer your questions. It's such a great topic because we all want to be what? Mentally fit. We'll be right back.
Amen.
A recent HHS government health survey found that nearly half of young adults 18 to 25 had experienced either substance use or mental health disorder during the height of the pandemic. The report also found that many of those people did not receive treatment.
I had a therapist tell me once, it was ironic how much love I gave out because I didn't give much to myself.
The bondage that we experience in our soul is not just from the event, but from the lies that the enemy whispered to you that it was your fault as a result of the event.
It is reminding myself that if someone can love a dying thing this way, can hold the Lazarus of my body and give thanks for the way it holds back, if someone can kiss the scars, administer the pills, absorb the bad days, and wake up smiling next to me, then I can try to breathe again. Because self-love does not always come first, or second, or even ever. But your love be the guardrail on the ledge, be the drawers that hide all the sharp things, be the body that carries my collapsed frame into bed, be the flowers you bought. Because even though they are dying too, they still dance. Love will not heal me, will not wipe my slate of a body clean. I will always be a woman of wounds, of rope-marked neck and melted skin. Love will not heal me, but it will hold my hand if I ever heal myself.
Wow. Every time I see that commercial in regards to mental fitness, it just blows my mind. It is such a real thing that we're going through. We want to welcome Pastor Farah back to Real Talk with Gene Price. Thank you, Pastor, for coming back and this talk about this. It's such a deep, necessary conversation.
Yes,
and I hope that everyone that is listening, whether they play it back again, really take heed to the things that you're saying, because I think we both can attest, and those that are watching it, it has such an impact on the society we're living. One of the things I thought about when we went to commercial, Pastor, was I was thinking about, we touched a little bit about trauma and how it affects the brain. And one of the things I looked at was the prefrontal cortex of the brain, our responses to emotional trauma or emotional things that happen. How does somebody fix that? I don't know, in your studies, have you ever known that frontal cortex to be healed? This is more curious. I'm curious. I'm really curious about that.
Yes, actually, I've seen it heal in the past through divine intervention, where we fight negative thinking. I always say, think about what you're thinking about, because if you don't fight negative thinking, it will overcome you at some point. The Bible says that take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. So you got to really be intentional about fighting those negative thoughts, because when they come, if we allow them to dwell and we allow them to stay and we don't fight those negative thoughts, then we become pessimistic. We become a person that expects something negative to happen, or look for disappointment, or wait, or have like a hopelessness starts to develop. And then once you start developing a hopelessness, you emotionally, spiritually, mentally, you're in a terrible place. So we have to really be intentional about fighting negative thoughts. And that may mean that you have to strategically do what's necessary to bring yourself out of that place mentally. You know, it could be going to watch a movie that makes you laugh. It could be taking time to worship or meditate, spend some time alone with God, talk to people that being around people that are good company, that makes you feel better. You know, you got to really fight it, because sometimes people don't fight those negative thoughts. They allow them to fester. They get worse and worse and worse, and they continue to develop into that place of hopelessness. And that's where suicide comes in.
Yeah. So is it safe to say that we need to safeguard our mental space?
Absolutely. And you got to do what's necessary. It's okay to say no. It's okay to know that there are some limitations. It's not a bad thing that you have limitations in some areas, because you get to know yourself and you know what you can handle, what you can't handle. And you are on a mission to maintain your mental health. So, you know, everybody might not understand it. That's okay. But you have to do what you need to do for you to maintain your mental health. And that may mean being intentional. That might mean fighting those negative thoughts. That might mean you do what you need to stay in a space that you need to be. And that varies, because we go to different stages of life. You know, as we get older, when we're younger, you know, we go through different stages. And when we step into a new stage of life, we got to say, okay, now that I'm in this stage of my life, what do I do now to maintain? You know, what do I need to do? I need to evaluate. I need to really reflect and say, God, show me, give me strategy. And sometimes God will lead you to the right person to help you with that, or he'll just give you a download so you'll know what you need to do for you.
That's powerful. And, you know, as you were talking, I can't even imagine not having God as part of the process.
Right.
Because we're Christians and we understand the weight that it takes to get through, everyday life, getting through things in our own life. I can't even imagine. I just can't imagine God not being a part of that process. It would just be, it would, to me, it would just be so difficult trying to navigate. I understand, like you're saying, you know, there are the professionals, there are the regimens, there are the resources. But in something like this, maybe I'm speaking, maybe I'm coming from my own life. It really does take an almighty God sometimes to know that you can push past or get through it. Now, the word you used was discernment, discerning the power of God, because it's real. I don't know. And you need to speak to that. And for those that are watching, play this one back. Play for somebody that you know that's struggling. Let them know that there are people that are out there that are God-fearing people that can help them. I can't see a pathway without Christ in it. Can you kind of, how does somebody get through without God? Because every client you have might not have a God-centered life.
Right. And
you mentioned meditation, how do you get through it?
Right. And they learn that. My clients learn over time that without God, without that peace, that it's not possible to overcome. But he gives a strategy to get through it. So a lot of my clients, they usually look for faith-based or Christian counselors, but some just look for specifics as far as gender and stuff like that. But before it's all over, they realize that component, that almighty sovereign component, the true and living God, is the biggest necessity, because he knows us. You know what I mean? Nobody knows us better than him, and he knows what we need. So him allowing us to understand what we need and do it, that's where we start to get the healing that's necessary. The fact that he knows us. Many times in my sessions, God will speak to me prophetically about something that the person needs at that moment, and it'll resonate. And then they'll be like, wow, that's God. That really is God. And that makes all the difference in your healing, for sure.
Right. So how can we, if we know somebody that's struggling or trying to, I'd rather say trying to be mentally fit. I love that term. How can we be more empathetic? Because I think sometimes we as people can forget where we come from.
Right.
Or we don't have the empathy to really assist someone in getting through it, even if it's just a kind word, even if in the video that played during the commercial and in the beginning, one young lady talked about the wounds of a woman and just being, like I said, empathetic, that love.
Right.
We
Right.
do better to help
Right.
someone.
That's so necessary. And I think if you are a child of God, he's going to convict you about that, about having that empathy and putting yourself in other people's shoes, understanding that, there's a deeper thing going on here. Some people look at the outward appearance or kind of like
Yes.
surface things and not really know that there's a deeper issue. There's a core issue that they're dealing with. But I think God will show you that there's something more here that we need to be cautious of, and not to
Yeah.
be thinking just on a self, thought
Yeah.
process. But you know what? There's something much deeper. And I think God will teach us that even through situations in our own lives. He'll teach us that you need to be more empathetic.
Yeah. I take no credit for the statement that I'm getting ready to make. It's one of my good friend, one of my pastor friends in Brooklyn, one of her members, an elder, beautiful, beautiful person. We were talking one day about trauma because I showed my documentary. We had this whole event. And she said to me that she oftentimes say to people, it's easy to say what's wrong with you, but
Mhm.
nobody asks the question, what happened to you?
Right.
And I give her
Right.
full credit for that. Nothing that I came up with. And I thought that was so powerful because
Wow.
it's so easy to go, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Right.
Did anybody take the time out to say to the little child or the grown woman or the man,
Right.
what
Right.
happened to you?
Right.
It
I
just
love
opens
that.
up this door of giving that person, go back to the word you use, Pastor, safety. It makes the person feel like,
Right.
wow, that person really cares about what's going on in my life. Not
Right.
what's wrong with me, but they want
Right.
to know what happened to me. So
Right.
can we talk
Right.
about that a little bit about oftentimes, and you said it, people looking at the outside. They're not
Mhm.
thinking, they may look at the person that,
Mhm.
has the short skirt on or the guy that
Mhm.
just looks like he's just, but maybe it's not
Mhm.
what's wrong with them. Maybe we
Right.
need to get into what
What
happened to you.
happened?
So can we talk about
Wow.
that? That it was
That
so
that
powerful. I said to her, I said, I want you to know I'm going to use your statement. So she gave me permission. So when I teach and I go out and I work with women and girls, and even sometimes, but when I work with people, I use it. I always give her credit for that because that thing, it
wow.
hit me here because
Wow.
nobody ever asked me what happened to me.
What
They
happened?
got what was wrong with me. Let's dive into that.
Wow.
It's not you an audience. Write something in the chat. Let's talk about that. How can this is about helping other people? Pastor, I'm sorry. I
Wow.
give you the floor now.
Wow,
What's your
that's
thought?
so deep. I love that statement so
Yeah,
much because
yeah,
so many people, if more people would look at it that way, it'll be a different world that we live in. You just never know what a person has been through or the
yeah,
trauma that they've dealt with or something that happened to them that really affected them for the rest of their life. They're a certain way because of this one incident or numerous episodes. And if you would peel back the layers of what a person
yes.
has been through, you'll find that there's so many traumatic things that people have seen. I remember I saw an interview with Tony Braxton's mother, and she said that she went through a divorce, and during the divorce, she felt like so insecure. She felt so low, her self-esteem just plummeted, and then she finally came to a place where God just removed the mask, and she started to feel herself again. And when she did, she started looking in the mirror, started saying how beautiful she was. It was her therapy, is what she needed. Then when she started to go out in public and people would compliment her, she would say, she would agree with them and say, yes, I am beautiful. People took that as her being conceited. They didn't
Okay.
know that that was a huge part of her therapy and that she almost lost her mind in that transition. So you really don't know what a person went through and what the reason why they're the way they are. And if you start looking at that, you'll have a different respect for people
Mhm.
that you come in contact with, and you'll be way more empathetic and sympathetic instead of being
Yes,
so judgmental. You know what the Bible says, that man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. And there's a reason for that. We have to have that God nature where we look deeper than what's going on
yeah.
the outside. It's just symptoms. Those are just surface things, but it's something
Come on.
deeper that we need to address and say, God, help me to minister to that thing that I don't even know about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's powerful. And it is easy to dive into what's wrong with you because even the way I said it, and I said it like that on purpose, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Right.
Instead of saying what happened to you, even the tone in my voice, it made the difference. And
Right.
I don't
Right.
think people understand, to your point, that I never knew that story about Tony Braxton's mom. But even as you said, in my mind, I tried to go back and some of the shows that, Braxton Family Values and how her mom was and different things. And it's such a blessing to know that God helped her get through it. But to your point,
Right.
Pastor, if we could be a little more empathetic and dive into the what happened.
Right.
I'm not making excuses for anybody's behavior. I don't want anybody to think that.
Right,
but there
right.
is a reason.
There's a
So
reason.
we want to be sympathetic to our reasons, but we don't want to be sympathetic to someone else's. That's
Right.
what we need to tune in and focus in on. That's really deep.
Right.
How can we improve mental illness? I don't want to call it illness, being mentally fit. What can we do again to help somebody that's just going through? How do we reach out? How can they reach out to you if they want to just talk to you about the importance of getting through things mentally? And I'm glad we're talking today about what's wrong, what happened to us. Because more people, when they come to you, Pastor, or even me or someone else, I think having that part of the regimen, I think it'll help us, those of us that are working with people. So what are some of the tools that we can use? Because we're all in this together, right? It's helping people.
Right, absolutely. So I'd say we always should seek out help in any best way we can. Try to gain a perspective, a different outlook on what you're going through, and say, God, what are you teaching me through this? Like, what do I need to? What's going to come out of this? Is there a testimony? Is there a development? Is there something that you're doing in the midst of this situation that I'm in that's going to help me in the long run? So the way you see it is going to be huge. If you look at it the wrong way, it's going to overtake you. You definitely want to be intentional about doing what you need to do. You want to know that if there are limitations and there are times where you need to say no, it's okay to do that. You absolutely want to guard your heart, right? You want to make sure that you're not pessimistic or thinking negative all the time. You want to fight those thoughts. Think about what you're thinking about, because those thoughts will really torment you at some point and take over your whole being. And definitely, lastly, you want to make sure you spend time alone with God. I always tell people to get a schedule where you spend time alone with God and you tell him your real issues and you deal with those issues in manageable parts. Try not to take on too much at the same time, because you can easily burn out, but you want to do it in a strategic way and say, okay, let me deal with this component and then step over here. And I believe God will give you the instructions you need to get through it. So, getting that help is definitely going to be helpful. I'm a born witness that God has anointed people that are trained professionals to really help you navigate through the issues that you're dealing with and not have to be worried about, anything that will cause you to feel, vulnerable or exposed when you're going through your issue, for sure. But there's so many ways.
Yeah, we honed in on being empathetic, and Shaniqua chimed in tonight, and she said it's so important to lead with empathy and love. But let's talk about the love piece. How important is it, Pastor, to lead or be led by love?
Well, that's important. And I always encourage people to have the love of God in you, because I don't think we know how to love without God. I think we have this innate thing where we can be a bit selfish until God kind of comes in and shows us to be otherwise. So I think we should be seeking him and being able to have the love of God in us and expressing that love to other people, because we really don't know how to do it without him. So I think by doing that, you'll know how to love, because some of the things that we may be calling love is not really love, or especially if you're doing it with an agenda behind it. You want to make sure that you have the love of God really leading you, where it really covers a multitude of sin. It really does. And it makes you look at things differently and looks at people differently, where you're not so angry at the person so much, but you're angry with the how the enemy has got involved and tormented this individual. So, you have to have that God perspective for sure.
I think I agree, Pastor. One of the things that was hard for me when I was transitioning to getting through some of the trauma that I went through was I didn't find that people were patient.
Right.
Patient in the transition. And that's very important. So let's talk about that for a few minutes we have left. We have about 5 minutes left. But how important is patience? Because when you're working with people, if you don't have the patience, it doesn't allow the person to feel, back to the word you used in the beginning, safe to come out. Let's talk about patience, because it really does take patience for you to have in order to help somebody. Why don't we have patience?
Yeah, patience is so important. And I prayed about this years ago about needing patience. And one way that God helped me to get more patient is he started making me wait for things. Things didn't come so quickly. I had to end up waiting for things, which developed my patience. So I think that when you genuinely want to be more patient, God will put you through a regimen to help you the patience develop. And then love is a big piece of that. When you really love somebody, for sure, it'll make you be patient with them and keep going even when it's hard. You know what I mean? So I think when we start really gaining that true love, that authentic love, that unconditional love, it'll cause us not to give up so quickly on people, not to always be willing to throw people away if they're not, getting it together in a time frame that we want them to. That love will cause you to be patient. And so we got to develop that love of God that he puts in us, and it'll cause us to do things that we normally wouldn't be able to do, for sure.
It's true. Angela chimed in and she said, yes, I am learning that now, learning how to be patient. We thank you for being transparent and saying that, Angela, because it is really true. It's easy to not be patient because to me, it's an easy way out. It does take patience when you're working with people, whether you're doing what you do as a case manager, pastor, or Shaniqua, who's a coach. It takes a lot of patience because you have to be in it to see the winning results. So for the last few minutes we've had Pastor on the show, tell us as a body of people that are listening to you tonight, how can we get winning results in navigating through being mentally fit? How do we get those winning results? Because you said yourself, you've seen people get through that prefrontal cortex. It can change. So how do we get those results? Because that's exciting for me. Because I think people need to see down the line. I'm here now, but oh boy, I can see, because the Bible tells us to call those things that are not as though they are. So I can see myself. I see myself healed. I see myself growing. I see myself developing. Give us those winning tools right now.
Absolutely. I think my daughter said it earlier, that faith without works is dead. And we have to have enough faith in God that he can bring us through, but we have to do the work along with it. So we got to make sure that we are intentional about our healing. We got to be participators in our healing and do whatever's necessary to get where we need to get to. And that may vary. You might have to try things that may not work at first, but you're going to be consistent. You're going to be dedicated, committed to your mental health, to your mental fitness. And when you do that, you're going to come to a place where God's going to bring you to a place of healing and restoration and renewal and regeneration. But he really wants us to work our faith, because faith alone it's not enough. You got to work it. Let them know that you really believe. I believe you enough, God, to do the work so that I can get to where I need to be, because my testimony is going to help somebody else. And I'm going to be able to minister to a person from a place of experience as opposed to a place of something I read in a book or somebody told me about. I had to work through some things so God can anoint me to minister to other people about those same things. So you got to definitely put the work in and have that faith in God that he's going to bring you through, for sure.
Well, Cece chimed in and she said from 1 John chapter 4, verse 21, anyone who loves God must also love their brothers and sisters as he first loved us. And I think that sums up everything. When you're working with people to be mentally fit, you have to love them as Christ loved us. I hope tonight, to everybody that has viewed us, I feel this was such a serious, powerful show tonight. And Pastor, thank you so much for bringing in your wisdom, for bringing in your expertise in being mentally fit. Anybody that needs to reach out to Pastor, please feel free. You can contact me. You can write it in the chat. My production team can reach out to you. But I think what Pastor's doing and so many others, God's using them. That's really the bottom line. God's using us to help change a world, to win a kingdom back. And mentally fit is such a key component. So Pastor, thank you again for joining us tonight on Gene Price. Thank you to my viewing audience. Again, we'll see you next Wednesday at 6:30 with another topic. We're going to have a real talk, a real conversation. And thank you for joining me tonight with Real Talk with Gene Price. Have a good night.
A recent HHS government health survey found that nearly half of young adults 18 to 25 had experienced either substance use or mental health disorder during the height of the pandemic. The report also found that many of those people did not receive treatment.
I had a therapist tell me once, it was ironic how much love I gave out because I didn't give much to myself.
The bondage that we experience in our soul is not just from the event, but from the lies that the enemy whispered to you that it was your fault as a result of the event.
It is reminding myself that if someone can love a dying thing this way, can hold the Lazarus of my body and give thanks for the way it holds back, if someone can kiss the scars, administer the pills, absorb the bad days, and wake up smiling next to me, then I can try to breathe again. Because self-love does not always come first, or second, or even ever. But your love be the guardrail on the ledge, be the drawers that hide all of the sharp things, be the body that carries my collapsed frame into bed, be the flowers you bought. Because even though they are dying too, they still dance. Love will not heal me, will not wipe my slate of a body clean. I will always be a woman of wounds, of rope-marked neck and melted skin. Love will not heal me, but it will hold my hand if I ever heal myself.